Welcome to The Hidden Load, the podcast where we uncover the unseen weight carried by the educators and leaders in medicine and explore how to lighten it. I am Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I am a family physician, an educator, a leader, and a coach. Each week, we will dig into the challenges that often go unspoken, from burnout and boundaries to purpose and identity to figuring out sustainability, and share practical tools to help you move from chaos to calm and from burnout to balance. Because the hidden load does not have to be yours to carry alone, and in fact, shouldn't be. Let's get started. This is episode number 16, the additional load of neurodiversity. To help us cover this important topic, I am excited to welcome Dr. Krystal Sodaitis to the podcast. She is a board-certified pediatrician who transitioned from academic medicine to health plan leadership in 2013. Krystal is also a certified life and weight coach with advanced certifications in physician coaching, leadership coaching, and deep dive coaching. Her coaching practice focused on physicians who have a neurodevelopmental diagnosis, such as ADHD, autism, or dyslexia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Krystal.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you. So let's start with just a little bit of a definition of what neurodiverse is.
Yeah. So the pure definition of neurodiversity really means that all brains function on a spectrum. So all of our brains have areas in which they excel and they have areas that they are weaker. In the colloquial term, though, neurodiversity has been adopted to mean someone whose brain functions in some way outside of typical or neurotypical. So for people with ADHD, it might be that they have more difficulty than other people in focusing or staying on task or other parts of the executive functioning, like short-term memory or, as I said, task initiation.
So with that in mind, when you're doing your coaching in general, how are you helping individuals? What is it that you're looking for?
A lot of the reasons why people will come to me for coaching will really depend on what their particular neurodiversity is. From a executive functioning standpoint, so executive functioning, just to give that definition, is the way our brains plan and execute. So the ability to wake up in the morning, get dressed, take a shower, brush your teeth, do all those things in a timely fashion so that you can get out the door and get to where you need to on time. All of that requires a ton of executive functioning. And so for the clients that come to me with executive functioning difficulties, we address whatever it is. For some of the physicians, it may be work organization, getting their charting done on time, being able to get through their inbox, getting to work on time. For other people, it may be home. Physicians, I believe that all physicians are intellectually gifted in some way. They have to be in order to get through the rigors of medical training. And for many of them, they are actually diagnosed as neurodiverse, what we'll call them later in life or as adults. So they've reached a point where the demand on their executive function has exceeded what they are capable to do, something that is new to them. Sometimes it's having a child, sometimes it's getting married, going through residency. So we address whatever their greatest struggles are. Sometimes it's even just being able to get the laundry done, get their kids ready for school. People may have other specific issues. For example, I coached one person who was not a physician, but still highly intelligent, who needed help studying and passing for their particular licensing boards. And this person had dyslexia, had a number of different diagnoses, and really needed my help in order to come up with some tools that would help him to be able to study effectively and pass.
I think it's amazing that you just spoke about how some of these people are diagnosed later on in life because they've been able to get through so much. To me, that maybe sounds like this hidden load, that maybe they've been working harder than everyone else has to get to this point and to move forward. Are there other additional hidden loads that you see or would say that individuals who are coming to you for coaching maybe are experiencing?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest hidden load is what people often refer to as masking. So the need to appear typical outside of, wherever their own home, their own domain. And so that creates cognitive and emotional load that really can, I think, really does negatively impact and potentially contribute to, burnout and work dissatisfaction. Many of them struggle with the fear of and the actual repercussion of workplace issues, that they are on a performance improvement plan because of difficulties that arise based on their disability, which actually qualifies them for accommodations.
I think that's so interesting. I've had this happen a few times where I'm their supervisor, they're struggling, and it will be this conversation of a performance improvement plan or multiple conversations about charting that they decide to go get testing at that point in time. And I've had several conversations with residents, with some of my faculty members, um, more than ever anticipated, who are shocked by this diagnosis in their 30s, in their early 40s, and it explains something that has been going on for their entire life in a way that they never understood possible. Do you feel like you're seeing that also?
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of people would come to me with. My discovery call, whatever you want to call it, I actually call it a what now call. And I'm happy to send you a link to that. But it's for a lot of people who got tested or even didn't get tested, but have just come to the realization. I support self-identification of ADHD or autism or any kind of neurodiversity, but they come to me and they feel very validated. They're like, wow, like now I understand. I understand why these tasks are more difficult for me than for other people. But now what? Like, I still can't get the laundry done. I still can't get to work on time. I still don't want to touch my husband at the end of a busy day because I'm like completely spent. What do I do now?
I think that's so important, that now what feeling. So it's absolutely the first step to be validated and to understand and to name it to get there. And the only reason for me that I feel like a diagnosis has helped has been at that point in time when they're able to actually ask for accommodations and go through the HR process, where then you need that letter from someone saying why you need those accommodations. But what are some of the strategies that you're able to start with during that now what conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really take a lot of my clues from the book Atomic Habits. I think it's James Clear's book that really talks about the science of habit making and habit breaking. And what I do with my coaching is, and because I'm very strong in executive functioning, I can take those tools and a lot of others. And I think of it almost as like a shelf, and I just bring them down and we try them. And we work on the mindset to see, is this going to fit? Many people with ADHD, and I use ADHD as the primary example because that's what we often talk about. Actually, dyslexia is the most common neurodiversity, but a lot of people don't even realize they have dyslexia until they get tested. But I coach mostly people with ADHD. ADHD brains are very dopamine driven. And so we might do some exploration to see if what are you trying to do? Will it be better to come up with a strategy that drives dopamine, that causes your brain to seek dopamine? Or is it better to come up with a strategy that is an avoidance of a dopamine like a dopamine drain? And we try things out. We work on the mindset to implement those strategies. And then when they come back, then we tweak. Did that work? Did that not work? Maybe it worked for the laundry. My favorite example is the laundry because so many people have difficulty with it. You know, that works for the laundry, but that's not, maybe that same strategy isn't going to work for charting, isn't going to work for being able to start that exercise program you really wanted to start.
I love that that's your example. This recording in December, but this episode is going to air in January. And there's this interesting day in January called Quitting Day, which is the second Friday of January for anybody that is not aware. And so what Quitting Day is, it's the day that most people have given up on their New Year's resolutions by. And I've been thinking a lot about this just recently because I'm sort of like, well, why do we start New Year's resolutions? Why do we start those habits in such big ways? And so what I'm trying to encourage people to do is do small steps to those habits, because then you can get those, like you said, those little dopamine hits, and feel like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then make the habit even bigger and bigger and get to the point that when find that right possibility for each of those habits.
Yeah. Yeah. I find so many of my clients, because a lot of them have had negative messages because of their undiagnosed neurodiversity, or maybe their diagnosed neurodiversity. They've had a lot of negative messages about their lack of follow through, or their, the most painful one is, not meeting expectations, not living up to your potential. Those are really damaging. And they have decided for themselves that, yeah, they're just a person that doesn't live up to their potential, that doesn't keep their promises. And so a lot of the work I often start with is knowing intrinsically that you can keep this commitment to yourself. And sometimes it's a very small thing, a tiny thing, just to start to build that knowledge that I follow through on what I say I'm going to do.
That's so important. I find that there has to be so much shame that comes in with that feeling. And it makes me sort of stop and pause and think about the people that I've had to have meetings with about their charts not getting done, about not following through on the task that they said they wanted to do, or often people that are really excited about a lot of things and it's hard to accomplish just one task. And every time they come to my office, they tell me how much they feel like they've let me down or how horrible they feel. And I always feel so bad about that. I don't want them to feel shamed. I just want to find a process that
Mhm.
can help them.
Yeah.
And so I guess for someone like me, for someone else who is educating an individual who is neurodiverse or who's leading a team with team members who have been identified as neurodiverse, what advice do you have in how we can support them and lead them through the process?
Most important thing is if someone comes to you and discloses a neurodiversity is to believe them. Many people, especially women of color, are dismissed. Like, oh, you can't have autism. You're a doctor. I see you have friends. Like, you can't have ADHD. You graduated from medical school. Like, no, actually, they can. And so, or if they come to you with a neurodiversity, because these are the three most common, but there are many: dysgraphia, dyscalculia, nonverbal learning disorder, that people have never heard of, and that we're only just starting to discover how common they are. So believe them. Maybe ask, someone trusted, or maybe do some research to see. We're physicians. Hope I don't know how many physicians are listening, but we're physicians. We have resources. We can look these things up and educate ourselves before we decide that this person is making it up. Because 9 times out of 10, like, they're not making it up. It's real.
I can't even imagine telling somebody, no, I don't believe your diagnosis, but I am imagining based on this conversation that it's happening far
It's
more than
happening. I know
I
many people. I have coached many people who have been told, no, that's not possible. I don't believe you.
Okay, so number one is to believe. What else?
Yes. The second thing is you can just ask them, what is the best way? How can I support you? They might know already and they may not. If they don't, I would say break things down into steps that are so small, they appear as if they're not going to make any difference. And that's how they start to build accountability with themselves, to know that they can do it, to build confidence that they can do it.
Could you give an example of that? Let's say, I'm going to say the one that I get the most often as a program director and also a leader is inbox management. It'll be the person that has 200 items in their inbox. I think this one is the most common. Uh, Are you saying that I say, okay, start like give them step by steps of how to triage their inbox or step by steps of what goals they need to meet? How would you recommend?
I think if someone is truly struggling, then they probably should get coaching. There are plenty of, they can come to me as a physician. They can get ADHD coach. There's plenty of ADHD coaches if that's part of if they have ADHD. I've been successful in having even programs provide some of the financial support to pay for the coaching. The difficulty in answering that question is that everyone's brain works differently. And so the way you prioritize your inbox messaging may work great for you and for some people, but for that particular person, it may not. But it's a good place to start to give them an idea of saying, okay, here's how I triage. But when I say making small steps, it could be something like you have 200 inbox messages. However much time, how much more time a day can you dedicate to clearing your inbox messages? It could start with 5 minutes a day. It could be something like, what's the bare minimum number of templates that you can create this week that you feel will help you clear your inbox or complete a chart? You start really small. And once they can do that, they feel like, yeah, 5 minutes, I've got that. That's fine. Then maybe you work to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And some of them may need some unpaid time off to clear their inbox. I mean, I have worked with people, physicians who they've had to take a week of unpaid leave in order to clear their late charts. And we have worked through the process so that during that week, they actually get the charts done and they don't just take a week off beating themselves up because they can't get their charts done.
You just actually answered what I was going to ask, but I'll ask if you can help expand upon it a little bit. When I have run into that situation and I've said, okay, we're going to pull you, we're going to cancel your clinic this week to make sure that we get things to be at a level that's safe again, to get you able to start fresh. Unfortunately, I feel like there's always so much shame that goes along with that conversation. And like I said, that's never my goal, is to provide shame to anybody. Are there things that a leader or an educator can do to help minimize the shame in that conversation? Because unfortunately, this is a type of situation where somebody else might see that the patients are canceled, that the patients are moved over to their schedule. And so it's not totally
Right.
in isolation.
Right. I mean, I don't think that really there is a way to mitigate the shame. You can, create an environment that is as supportive as possible. You can create sooner breakpoints so that when you're seeing, okay, we've gone from, a threshold, whatever it is, like you're 50 charts late. That's going to take a day. Like, you're going to have to take a day and make it up another time and see if we can get half of those complete at least.
Okay, that's great advice. And so you've said to believe them, to make small, achievable goals for them. Anything else that you have as a recommendation, and send them to coaching. I think that's also always a great idea to help them get additional support outside of the environment.
Yeah. I think normalizing that everyone has skills, everyone has gifts. Um, Pointing out, if you can point out where their strengths are. Many people with neurodiversity are also emotionally very intuitive. Generally, they're personable. Their patients love them because they love to spend time with them. Depending on the specialty, steering them to a long-term career choice that can really accommodate their strengths.
I have had some team members that have been able to ask with their accommodations to have either longer appointment times or additional administrative time. Sometimes, of course, that has come with different salary because the
Mhm.
RVs were different, but making those adjustments was very worthwhile and long-term sustainability. So having that ability, I think, can be helpful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
How about someone who has not identified neurodiversity, but maybe you're wondering if this is part of uh, what they may be experiencing, particularly if you're their educator leader? Are there ways that you can recommend to support them until they reach that realization, or encourage them to gather additional information?
Yeah. I will say that most of us probably have some traits of something. I kind of make a joke that there's, every once in a while I'll pull something out of my brain and I'll be like, yes, that's my corner of the spectrum and I like it here. And so you may have a trait and maybe not meet the full diagnostic criteria. We can still support that. If someone, for example, finds bright lights and noise or very strong smells really disruptive, they don't need to have an autism diagnosis in order for you to make an adjustment to say, like, okay, well, we're going to move your office and your rooms away from the kitchen so that when people are cooking their food, it's not as disruptive for you, or whatever it is that they need. So if someone is identifying that maybe they do have some specific sensitivities, or maybe they are finding it difficult to cut off conversations and keep to those, 15-minute, 20-minute appointments, hopefully as leaders, if those people reach out to us, or we're seeing you're running, I see that you're running over. Is there a way that I can help you? What do you think the issues are? Just being open to people's strengths and their weaknesses.
Thank you so much for that. In addition to in our small teams, are the ways that we can be advocating on a bigger system level, whether it's in an office, in a bigger health system, or even advocating on a larger stage for supporting our peers who are experiencing this?
Yeah, again, it's the normalization. And one thing I forgot to mention too is to let them know, there are other people who struggle. Maybe for privacy reasons, you don't want to say, hey, Joe in the next pod over there, like he has ADHD too. Like you're not going to say that unless Joe's public about it. But knowing that, we all have our strengths, I think as leaders, creating systems that really value neurodiversity. Some people's neurodiversities can be disturbing to some people, right? Someone is regularly interrupting or kind of tells us a story in a circle, right? That can be off-putting to some people, but trying as best as you can to let as leaders know, like, you know what? Yes, that person talks in a circle, but their input is always valuable. So let's listen to the message and maybe not stop it just because of the way it's delivered. And being open to what other people's, needs are when it comes to neurodiversity.
It's such an important point. How did you get into this aspect of coaching?
When I first got started as a certified coach, I never thought that I would I never thought that I would do one-on-one coaching. I initially certified as a leadership tool. And I fell in love with one-on-one coaching as I went through certification. I think that it appealed to me because I was no longer in clinical practice. And so it brought me back to that sort of caring for another person. And for those of the doctors and other highly intelligent people on this call, we often have highly intelligent children. And when you are a parent, and even now, if you do a search and say, like, how do I help my gifted child? There's a zillion hits. But what I found is that support when those children become adolescents and young adults really falls away. And there is a lot of depression, anxiety, failure in that population. And I really felt called to reach out to adolescents and young adults and to coach. And initially, I was coaching gifted adolescents and young adults. In that young adult age group is residents. And the more I coached physicians and young physicians who identified with a neurodiversity who didn't think, like the first person, I never forget the first person I coached who had social anxiety. And she's brilliant, absolutely brilliant and wonderful. And coaching her through that, I was like, this is it. Like, this is where my strength is. And these are the people I want to coach. And so I spent about a year discerning if I wanted to give up my teenagers. And I decided that, yeah, I would focus. And really, I love what's been termed the twice exceptional brain. So people who are gifted and have a neurodiversity, and physicians, it's just easy. It's just an easy delineator, but I've coached lawyers, architects, other highly gifted people, and I'm really fascinated by the way their brains work.
And so, as you started doing this work, was there something that you've learned along the way in coaching these individuals that is sort of an aha that you learned later on that you wish you would have realized earlier to help them?
Yeah. Um, your strength can always support your challenge. This is also one of my favorite stories. This person was an architect who was studying for his boards, and he had some dyslexia and had a really poor short-term memory when it came to reading. And weeks into coaching, he just mentioned, if I draw something, it's hard coded. I have a photographic memory for everything I draw. And so we went to, it's like, he can draw what he's studying, he can draw, and then it's done. It's in his brain forever.
That is amazing. And I feel like a good word of advice for everyone, that you can always use your strengths to help you where you're struggling. You just have to make that connection.
Right.
That's
Right.
so helpful. And it's a good thing to remember as an educator, that I can lean on that for my team when they're feeling frustrated, when they feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they can't
I can
win.
speak for myself. Like, I generally have poor organizational skill. Like, I consider, and again, when you're talking about neurodiversity and someone is at the 99th percentile in some areas, and in another area they're at the 80th percentile, they they feel that difference. So I don't know if I really have poor organizational skills or if it's just a relative poorness. But I have a really strong skill in creating muscle memory. Like, I can figure out a way to create a muscle memory. And so I use that strength in order to, I've done it everything from never losing my house keys to creating an exercise routine so that I exercise, 5 to 6 times a week.
That is amazing. I love that a few moments ago you spoke about social anxiety as an aspect of neurodiversity, because I think that is one that many people don't associate with neurodiversity quite as commonly. And I would say that's probably between social anxiety, between aspects of other types of anxiety and depression. I think that those are ones that I see the most often amongst my learners, and particularly in healthcare, where it used to be taboo to talk about it. We're supposed to be the strongest that are there. This is the one that I feel like I've seen the most conversation about recently. At least I've seen at least the most normalizing of recently. And with so many changes to leave policies for our residents and fellows, I think that's been wonderful for them. And though I also feel like I feel the shame that sometimes they have of feeling like they can't get through, or that they have to take that leave, even though those processes are there for them. Are there ways that you feel like we can support them in making sure that they're taking what they need to help make their lives sustainable, and this career sustainable? Because I don't want people leaving healthcare if they don't have to.
Yeah, and I think it's allowing for and creating for those stopgaps before it gets to that point. And for example, if it's a resident, how much pressure is there to do things outside of work, to be present, to not give themselves the necessary downtime after a busy clinic day, and balancing it, right? If they have a very emotionally or socially intense rotation, they need to know, like, this isn't the time. We are recording this in sort of the Christmas season. It's like, how are you taking care of yourself? Are you able to say no to some, social events so that you can recharge and be back to yourself when it's time to get back to work? And any other built-in, possible accommodations. I mean, for some people, I have even worked with some residents who extended their, working with their program, extended the program so that they could, let's say, take time, like a week in between, to just to be able to rest, recharge, regroup.
I think that's such a good point. I have conversations with some of my residents, who I know the inpatient times in particular are harder to schedule additional vacation for themselves, bookending those times to really think about when it's going to fall. Are they taking their inpatient times when it's super dark outside? We're both in Chicagoland, if where we have sun for several months, it seems, and being thoughtful about how much time they're taking to recover during these periods. Is there anything else that you think people should know about the benefits of working with a coach when they might have neurodiversity, or if they're going to recommend it for a learner or a team member?
Yeah. Um, I think that for people who are wondering, so I'm a big believer in coaching. I always have a coach that I work with on a regular basis because we really can't see our own brains. As humans, we have the ability of metacognition. We can think about what our brains are doing, we can think about what we're thinking about, but we don't have the ability to reflect back to us non-judgmentally about those thoughts and to even catch like that's not actually accurate. Like I that thought is not really one that I should believe or I want to believe. So I think there's a lot of benefit to working with coaches, period. If you have a neurodiversity, the benefit of working with a coach that specializes in neurodiversity is that we understand the different ways that these conditions can manifest and hopefully have a range of tools that can help you. One thing I don't like and that I would caution people against is a very specific program. Like you have ADHD, I have the solution for you for getting stuff done. Well, it really worked for that person with ADHD and the way that person's ADHD brain worked, but it may not work for the way your brain works. And so you want somebody who's willing to sort of like work with you. I'm thinking of it as like the twists and turns of like, nope, that didn't work. Oh, that worked. We'll go down this road for a little bit. Oh, we got to tweak it here. Um, because all the brains are different. I would encourage programs to be more willing to, whether it's CME money or other money they have, to or have a fund for residents who truly are struggling, who are on the verge of maybe a repeat or a failure, to encourage them to, seek out a coach or even have a repertoire of coaches. I work for a health system that has coaches on staff. I coach for my health system. And sometimes people self-refer and sometimes people are referred by their managers.
Is absolutely amazing. I think that the other question I have for you is, how about when the faculty or leaders themselves are neurodiverse? I feel like there's sometimes that extra pressure to show up as perfect in those,
Absolutely.
or to
Right?
feel
And
like,
not show your vulnerability, which,
yes, exactly.
if you listen and you follow Brene Brown at all, she thinks vulnerability is a key component to leadership. And I think you know, a lot of these neurodiversities have kind of become kind of like a catchphrase. Oh, that's my OCD or, whatever, and not use it in a flippant way. But if you're a leader and you do have a condition and you want to say, like, I overcame the struggle, or even just saying like, I really need you to put this message into a voicemail, if you could please, instead of an email, because it's easier for me to listen than to read because I struggle with dyslexia. And show that vulnerability and not make that accommodation behind the scenes if you're comfortable. But even more so, I think that if you have neurodiversity as a leader and you continue to move up the leadership track, you really need a coach. I think all leaders need coaches because of the cognitive strain of leading, but even more so if you have neurodiversity, because that added executive functioning, at some point there's going to be a crack. And it could be really problematic.
I would say not only the cognitive strain, but the isolation also that comes
Yeah.
with leading, and it just sort of amplifies everything, at least in my opinion. I am somebody who has struggled greatly myself with social anxiety. And so I talk with people about that. And so, like, even the fact that I'm doing this podcast now was sort of a journey in being able to get that out there. It's different, obviously, than standing in a room of 1,000 people, um, but being able to share how you've overcome different things, the people that have supported you along the way, and the tools that have helped can, I think, be really meaningful and authentic in sharing that journey. But Krystal, as we get close to the end, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think is important to talk about?
I think the key, and, I think the take home, if I could get one, is that you're not alone. 20% of the population has some kind of neurodiversity. It is not bound to intelligence. So that means it happens across all spectrums of the IQ scale. And so don't be afraid to reach out, ask for help. Help is there if you need it.
So as we close, I really just want to read this part they didn't read before your bio, where it says, "Our brains are amazing, and Krystal wants us all to embrace the different yet glorious ways our brain work." And she helps us harness their gifts, not squelch them. I absolutely love that. And with that being said, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my My website is neurodiversedocs.com. And there you can find, I've got a blog. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, and that's just under my name, Krystal Sodaitis. If you search for it, you can find me on LinkedIn, and a little bit on Facebook, and not much on Instagram, but you can always find me there under Life Coaching for Gifted.
Thank you so much. And I will include all of that in the show notes. It's been absolutely lovely to have this conversation. I think it's such an important one. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this more because I think that this is going to be hopefully a more frequent thing that educators and leaders are talking about as people feel empowered to have these conversations and get the support that they need in healthcare.
I hope so too. Thanks for having me.
For joining us. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Hidden Load for the educators and leaders in medicine who hold everyone else up. Our next episode is going to be all about time efficiency. I hope you'll join us then. Thanks for joining me on The Hidden Load. Tag me on Instagram at Dr. Tina Wheat or email me at santina@santinawheat.com with your takeaways and ideas. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, let's lighten your hidden load.